So welcome everybody to 52 Levin Ideas. Tonight is Poetry Mondays. We do 3 parts here with our poetry sessions. I do present to you a featured poem, and then I open it up to all of you, invite you to read your favorite poem or a poem that you yourself wrote. And what I do is I do collect all the poems read. And we have a hyperbook where we have all the poems listed. If it's a personal poem, we reach out to folks and we will never post anything of yours without your consent. That's all done definitely before we post anything. So after everyone reads their poems, their favorite poems, we do go out into breakout rooms and we do a collaborative poem. We provide you with a focus theme and you create a poem together. I'll go into more details right before we go into the breakout rooms. Today's theme, we're going to be looking at concepts of self and ego. We're looking to use Jung's definitions of self and ego. He views the self as the totality of a person's being, and the ego is, it represents the conscious mind. So I'll go over that again when we're about to go into the breakout rooms. So let's go ahead and get started with today's featured poem. Today's featured poem is by Charles Benefield. The title is I Am Diversity, Please Include Me. Actually, one more some more public announcements before I get into the featured poem. We do ask here at 52 Levin Ideas if you would please remain muted if you're not speaking. During the featured poem, I will make sure everyone's muted before I start. And then we do allow you to unmute. The way that you raise your hand here is type exclamation mark in the chat, or you go ahead and raise your hand electronically. And that's the way we call on you to read your poem or your favorite poem. Okay, well, that's it for my public announcements. I Am Diversity, Please Include Me by Charles Bennafield. I'm present in every place you go, depending on your lens, I'm friend or foe. I'm a force to be reckoned with, like the winds of change I move. I'm swift, I'm present when I'm present when 2 or more are together. If embraced, I can make the good even better. I'm not limited to age, gender, or race. I'm invisible at times and yet all over the place. Don't exclude me due to a lack of knowledge. Welcome me like the recruit fresh out of college. Let me take my seat at the table, even though I may be differently able. My experience, my passion, the authentic me can help add value for your company. Learn about me, improve my underrepresentation, and I can provide a competitive edge to your entire nation. I exclude no one. I am strengthened by all. My name is diversity, and yes, I stand tall. Recognize me and keep me in the mix. Together, there's no problem that we can't fix. I am your best hope towards true innovation. And to many, I reflect hope and inspiration. Your lives and companies will continue to change. Thus, the need for diversity and inclusion will also remain. Do all that you can to truly embrace me and experience life's fullness totally. I'm the thought lurking behind the unfamiliar face. I'm the ingenuity that helps your team win the race. I'm the solution that came from the odd question that was asked. I stand out in the crowd when I, diversity, am allowed to be unmasked. I'm diversity. Embrace me and we'll journey far. I'm diversity. Include me and we will reach the shining star. Coupled with inclusion, our lights burn longer. Together, we are smarter, better, and stronger. I am diversity. Yes, that's me. So this poem, I came across this poem by absolute accident. I was sorry guys. Is everyone still there? Apologies. I did not mean to do that. That was my mistake. Okay, my apologies. I did something wrong. All right, I was trying to kick one person and I did something else by mistake. Okay, so Charles Benefield is actually he's a pastor, and he wrote this and posted it. I actually don't recall where he posted it. I did find it in the greatexpectations.org website. And I just thought it was just so beautiful. I just had to share it. He is a Catholic priest from England. And he's, you know, I'm not sure what his message might be, if there's any religious undertones, but to me, I just see the idea that, you know, I love the concept that, you know, we are better and stronger with all of the diversity. So I just thought that was great. So I invite you all to please type an exclamation mark in the chat if you would like to read a poem, read your own poem. I should have, right. Oh, sorry, I took away the chat. Apologies, you should be able to chat now. I apologize for that. And what I will do is invite you to read your poem. And then when you read your poem, I'll ask you to, you know, give us, tell us a little bit about why you chose the poem. What about it spoke to you? So first up, I have Cecilia. Cecilia, go ahead.
Is it only just one poem? Because I have real difficulty in deciding between.
Well, I tell you what, read one poem now, and then you can raise your hand and you can go again.
Okay, thank you, because I have so much difficulty. It's just two of them that I love so much.
I mean, are they two that you would rather go together? You can read them at the same time if you'd rather.
I don't know if it could be an interesting, like I would try and tie them together.
I will leave it up to you. You can read, if it's two poems, okay. I was afraid you had like 5. If you have two poems, you can read 2 of them together. If not, read one and then put yourself back in the queue for later.
Okay. Well, if you don't mind my reading them both together, because they are, one is a Spanish poet and the other one is an African-American. I'm in Canada, by the way. So this is one of my favorite poems from Langston Hughes, who could potentially be, if not my favorite poet, very close to with County Cullen. And anyway, it's called I Too Sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I, too, am America. So would you like me to explain why I chose this poem, or would you like me to look at them together and read
Yes,
the
go
other
right
one and
ahead.
we'll talk afterwards? Well, I really like poets of the Harlem Renaissance because they were living at a time when things were very tough. They still are very tough, but they were tough. And yet these voices managed to rise, rise up and talk about things that were really important. Precisely the segregation and the lack of dignity that these people were subjected to. And it's a poem that I teach. I'm a teacher still, and it's just so simple, but yet conveys the message, that of inclusion, right? And since you were talking, you presented a poem about inclusion. It's like, yes, like I too am America, and it's only because you are blind and you do not see who I am, it's like linked to the invisible man. And it's like, you don't see me, you don't give me a voice. And yet when you realize, you will realize how beautiful I am. And my husband was from Trinidad. I lost him 3 years ago after 35 years. And so it's like, I'm grateful that I was one of those people who was able to see that beauty, that real beauty. And, for me, it represents that I've been very lucky that I don't see ethnicity, I don't see race, I just see human beings, right? And then the other poem is by Pablo Neruda. I'm not Spanish, but I was born very close, in a country very close, and I teach this one as well. And it's, to me, it is the one, he talks about something that unifies us all, no matter where we come from, no matter, what race, nationality, gender, whatever, okay? And it's something that can happen to everybody. And it's just so beautiful. And it's what it is that we do here, poetry. And so it is called Poetry, and it's by Pablo Neruda, a Spanish poet who lived from 1904 to 1973. And he writes poetry. And it was at that age, poetry arrived in search of me. I don't know where it came from winter or a river. I don't know how or when. No, they were not voices, they were not words, not silence, but from a street it called me, from the branches of night, abruptly from the others, among raging fires or returning alone. There it was, without a face, and it touched me. I didn't know what to say. My mouth had no way with names. My eyes were blind. Something knocked in my soul, fever or forgotten wings, and I made my own way, deciphering that fire. And I wrote the first faint line, faint without substance, pure nonsense, pure wisdom of someone who knows nothing. And suddenly I saw the heavens unfastened and open, planets, palpitating plantations, the darkness perforated, riddled with arrows, fire and flowers, the overpowering night, the universe. And I, tiny being, drunk with a great starry void, likeness, image of mystery, felt myself a pure part of the abyss. I wheeled with the stars. My heart broke loose with the wind. And this is how I feel about not just poetry, but about life. And that if we all speak one universal language, and it's the language of the soul, and poetry is the language of the soul, then we are united. And there is diversity in the one, but one in the diversity, and we are all one. And so that's why I love this poem too. And thank you so much for indulging me, my first foray here with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's absolutely my pleasure. And you know, I said to folks here when we started doing this, so we are entering into, this is the beginning of our 5th month doing Poetry Mondays. And when we started, I told everyone, you know, as we move together here in Poetry Mondays, we will, you will all learn what's going to be happening is that I will be sharing a tiny piece of my soul with you, and you will be sharing a tiny piece of your soul with me, because, and I truly believe that that's the way that poetry moves us. So thank you very much, Cecilia. Next up, I have Anton.
It just so happens that Maritza, you were saying that the theme for today when we go into collaborative poems is self and ego. I chose song lyrics, not something I wrote this time, but that specifically have to do or related to ego and related to Jung. Didn't know that this was going to be the thing, but sometimes that's how things turn out. I delight in that. It's called Beneath the Mask. So here it is. Where have you been? Been searching all along. Came facing twilight on and on, without a clue, without a sign, without grasping yet the real question to be asked, where have I been? I'm a shapeshifter at Poe's masquerade, hiding both face and mind, all free for you to draw. I'm a shapeshifter, what else should I be? Please don't take off my mask, revealing dark. Moments of calm, nothing left to be found. A mirror right in front of me, that's where I find. An empty glass, reflecting the sad truth. It's telling words not to be told. I need that mask. I'm a shapeshifter at Poe's masquerade, hiding both face and mind, all free for you to draw. I'm a shapeshifter, chained down to my core. Please don't take off my mask, my place to hide. I can't tell you how to see me, just a cage of bones. There's nothing inside. Will it unleash me, burning down the walls? Is there a way for me to break? I'm a shapeshifter at Poe's masquerade, hiding both face and mind, all free for you to draw. I'm a shapeshifter, have no face to show. Please don't take off my mask, my disguise. It actually, I ran across this song. So this is apparently a song that's on a soundtrack for a movie. It could even be an animated movie. I never saw it. And I'm not quite sure who the author is, but I was moved by the, it's a dark song, but like the lyrics, it's one of the most contemplative songs that I listen to, especially for like singers. So I was moved, might be a strong word, but it's definitely contemplative. And I found it because there's a trap beat that was made with the song called Beneath the Mask from the soundtrack of whatever this movie is. And there's a woman singing, and I like her voice. So there's other associations that I have there, but it reminds me of, I realized what vague familiarity I have with Carl Jung and the idea of persona. It's like, it seems like it directly ties in with that. I don't know if that's what the point was, but definitely reminds me of it. So, yep, that's what I have to say.
So I believe that's Lin Ian. I'm not sure how to say the last name. It's Inaizumi.
Yeah.
Beneath the Mask is by Lin Inaizumi, is the author.
I saw a couple of names online. That's the only reason I say I don't know for sure, because I looked up something else in the soundtrack and I saw some other name, but I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anton. Next up, I have Alison.
Okay, so yesterday I went to a street festival, and they had 2 poets there that were writing poetry on the spot for people. So the one that wrote one for me, his name was Quinton the Poet. I have no idea what his last name is. And he said to tell him, give him a word, a theme, or tell him a story, and he would write a poem. So, so I told him a story. So this week, someone from my high school died. I didn't really know him. He was 2 years older than me, but I always really, really admired him. So it was hard hearing about his death. His name was Steve Fouter. He was the first punk rocker in my high school. And my high school was very, very, very conservative. It was like a sea of Izod shirts everywhere you looked. And here was this kid with this blue mohawk and this trench coat and these Doc Martens at a time where absolutely nobody anywhere around me dressed like that. Not in my conservative town, that's for sure. And I just, and people were pretty awful to him. And I thought he was amazing and so cool. And he apparently had like an almost perfect score on the SATs. And so he was really, really, really smart. And when this came out, it shocked the teachers because he hardly ever went to class. They had no idea that what he was doing when he wasn't there. Apparently he was reading a lot. But what was really cool about him was that I knew actually a friend of his, Joe Escalante, who was in my French class, and he became like the second punk rocker. The two of them and a couple other guys formed a band called the Vandals, which wound up becoming pretty famous in punk rock circles. And they spent a lot of, the band spent many, many years touring the world. So what I felt when I would see him was I felt like he gave me permission to be myself. And he kind of showed me that I didn't have to be like everybody else. Because I was just always this like quirky artsy girl who tried to kind of hide that, and hide the fact that I was really smart. And, I'm INFJ, so I'm already, only 1% I'll ever be a part of. So I just felt like it gave me permission to be me. That's what I really liked about him. So anyway, I told this story to Quinton the Poet, and he wrote this poem. The Vandals for Alison. Molds are most fun broken. Occasionally we stumble upon hammers that clamor to make art from the shattered pieces. Structures are only sacred so long as they serve the souls. Punks that shattered the rocks those buildings were made of, so that we remember that we make the rules. There is a new school dedicated to unlearning. This is where I discover that I can design the sheet music that harmonizes the unique notes of my life. Rock on. The guitar and drums speak for that part of me that finds freedom in breaking through. Rock on, Steve Fouter. I just thought it was pretty cool that he could just like make something up that quickly. And it's so good, I thought.
That's pretty neat. And what was the poet's name?
He just has it as Quinton the Poet. Doesn't put his last name. Yeah, but he was pretty good.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
That's great. So next up, I have Brian Allenby.
Hi, okay. What I've been doing for the past few weeks, every week I pick a poem. And when it gets within a couple of hours of this meetup, I decide for various reasons it's the wrong poem and I won't read it. So I usually pick another. Normally because it's too long. My favorite all-time poem takes about half an hour to read. So I keep thinking, shall I subset it? So I just take some verses, but no, I didn't do that. And the poem I was going to read today is also quite long. The other poem that I really would love to read, and one day when I get the courage to speak in the language, because it's not in English, but it's from what has become over the past couple of years a favorite poet of mine, who is called Salome Urenia. And she's written some beautiful poems. So left me with nothing much to do tonight. So what I did was I wrote a sonnet, which it's still in my own handwriting. So it might be a bit hesitant because my handwriting is not that good. But anyway, It's called The Gathering. They gather, having emptied their minds, to have them filled up afresh. They each have their reasons of a different kind, awaiting with fast and bated breath. The master waits for their entrance to cease, then gavels and brings them to heel. The recording is started, heart rates increase. He fingers the reins for the feel. The wisdom is given, silence prevails. Questions are requested and met. Satisfaction delivered, yet one more time. All leave and go up to bed. On the morrow, with fresh ideas to expound, the flock meets again to understand why the world is round. That's it.
That's great. Thank you. Hey, Brian, I would like to maybe suggest or provide you with another option, perhaps. If you have a poem that you think is very long, maybe send me an email and we can consider making it a featured poem 1 week, if you would like, and we can do it that way. So just you know, and if it's very, very long, maybe what we can do is we can have several different people help us read it together. So that way you wouldn't have to be speaking for the entire half hour, and you can share the burden with other fellow poets.
Okay, the one I was going to read tonight, I actually timed it and it was 5 minutes, but that seemed a long time to me.
No, that would be fine.
It's called The Ballad of Reading Jail.
Oh,
Say again?
yes.
The Ballad of Reading Jail.
Mm-hmm.
The one that takes a long time is called The Ancient Mariner.
The Ancient Mariner. Marriage.
Mariner.
Oh, Mariner. I apologize. I need to clean my ears today.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, we'll look into that and see what I can do for future.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian. I have next up, I have Paul. Oh no, wait, I apologize. Marco, my apologies. You're up next.
This is called The Blizzard by Phyllis Levin. Now that the worst is over, they predict something messy and difficult, though not life-threatening. Clearly, we needed to stock up on water and candles, making tureens of soup and things that keep when electricity fails and phone lines fall. Igloos rise on air conditioners, gargoyles fly and icicles shatter frozen runways, lines in markets and paralyzed avenues. Verify every fear. But there is warmth in the sudden desire to sleep, to surrender to our common condition. With joy, watching hours of news devoted to weather, people finally stop to talk to each other, the neighbors. We didn't know we're always here. Today, they are ready for business, armed with a new vocabulary.
Thank you, Marco. What about this poem spoke to you?
Sorry, I had to turn the page. It was.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, keep going.
Casting their saga in phrases as severe as last night's snow, damage assessment, evacuation, emergency management. The shift of the wind matters again, and we are so simple, so happy to hear the scrape of a shovel next door. Yeah, I like it because it just shows like the sort of like, you know, when snowstorms happen or like something like, you know, on the news happens, like how it, or like pandemics, how it like brings people together. And yeah.
Thank you, Marco. Hey, if I may, can you tell me one more time, please, the name of the author, the poet?
Yeah, it's Phyllis Levin.
Phyllis Levin. Thank you. Thanks, Marco. Okay, next up is Paul. Hi, Paul.
Hello. Well, tonight I thought I would liven the group up a little with, well, the story behind this is it's a song. It's only about 3 minutes because I'm only going to play 3 minutes of it. I was introduced to it today on the show Fresh Air with Terry Gross. So any of you who saw that will know what I'm going to play, but it really moved me. It's a singer named Rhiannon Giddens, and she had an album. It may because it's Juneteenth, it may have been a rerun that Terry Gross did, but I looked it up afterwards and the context of it. So she writes songs, and she wrote a song that was called Freedom Highway about various aspects of the experience of slavery in America. And this is a song, they made a point of describing it about not a slave, but an enslaved person. And I don't know if you've heard that distinction, but this thing about who is the person? They're not a slave. They're a person. There is a person whose circumstance is enslaved. So it's about who you are. And the song is about that because it's a woman who, it's the union, they're in the South. She works on a plantation for someone. The Union troops are approaching the plantation, and the mistress of the household is trying to urge this slave to stay and not go with the Union troops who will be freeing her. And she's also trying to get her to protect the wealth of her estate. So she's so brazen as to think, oh, I fed you, I was so good to you, you wouldn't want to go off with those people now. And the song is very intense in how it ends. And I think you'll be able to hear the words. I needed that context so I can just play part of it. Can I go ahead and play it now? Okay, hope you can hear it. Let's see now. Now I go back to this and I just hit this. Maybe a little bit earlier. 118. Okay. That's it. I hope you could hear it.
Yes, I heard it very well. Hopefully everyone else could.
Very
It's
intense.
quite lovely.
Yeah, thank you. I have for tonight.
Right, so I invite anyone else who would like to read their poem or a favorite poem of theirs. I invite you to please raise your hand, type exclamation. Okay, let's, if nobody else is itching to read a poem, let's go ahead and move on to the next portion of our evening. What we do here today is we do the collaborative poem, and it is not required that you attend, but we do ask that you participate. It seems like it might be scary, but I promise it's not that scary. It's actually quite lovely. So what happens is you go into a breakout room, and the breakout sessions are not recorded. So, you know, you can speak up without fear of anyone recording it. They're not recorded. So there's a moderator in the room. The moderator will have a screen share up, and everyone will provide a line. We're asking you to think about the self and the ego. We're looking at Jung's definition of the self, and he's talking about the self as the the totality of a person's being. And we're looking at the ego, and the ego does represent the conscious mind, right? So that's what we're looking at. So we're asking you then to keep that theme in mind when you go into the breakout room, and you will provide a line for the poem. And so we decided we wanted to I think we're doing 25 minutes now. So the first 15 to 20 minutes, you'll spend everybody feeding lines to the moderator, and the moderator will feed lines as well. And then the last 5 to 10 minutes, and that's at the discretion of the moderator based on the group or how you guys are doing. Last 5-10 minutes will be spent looking at the lines, thinking if you want to rearrange them, if you want to change a little bit of them here or there, so that you can have a cohesive poem that you're pleased with when you come back into the main room here with us. It's really quite fun. I know it sounds scary, but just, you know, get your lines out there. Don't be shy, and you will find that it's really quite a lovely experience. I'm going to go ahead and create the breakout rooms now, and we'll be sending you there. If you have any questions, just reach out to either myself or Alison. Alison is going to be she's going to be the moderator in one of the rooms, and I will be the moderator in the other room. And then we will go from there. I will see you guys back here in 25 minutes. I'll go first. So we actually did not name our poem, but here you go. Unknowable, intangible, but inferred in my soul. Self-emanating, a centripetal force. Who is this self? It is supposed to be me. Show me in the mirror and then let me be. Am I sleepwalking or walk sleeping? A trip, a rabbit hole, a dream. How deep is this journey? A self with a hole, but is that wholeness? The self is all embracing, every waves in every oceans. An evolution that is not progressing, infinite. Jung is not here. Who is whispering to me? Conscious, preconscious, unconscious. Hide and seek. Continuity and identity war within me. Is infinity an identity? Wish I knew it instantly. Don't call me blind when I see with my open heart. In a lifelong unfolding, the driving force is the self, unknowable, intangible, but inferred in my soul.
Wonderful, wonderful. Alison.
Okay, hi. Hold on a second. Okay, ours is called One. I dwell between the notes of our universal song, not the song I sing, not the one you chant. The song repeats in myriad ways, the octaves getting higher and higher. You hear a C, I hear a D. So much dissonance, and yet the song remains the same. I enter into my mind, trying to escape myself. Like a funhouse mirror, I am confronted by an altered view of me. Each mirror, one after the other, unfolding and reflecting pieces of myself. Slipping into the river of being, each world synchronous with another, different yet the same, stripes on the same tiger.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So what was it like? Anybody who wants to share the experience of doing this poem? We got the idea of choosing this topic from our Jung meetup yesterday. So Celia, go ahead.
Yes, I'm completely new to this, having discovered your wonderful group yesterday, and I just it's been so incredible. The whole experience has been incredible. First of all, listening and being able to share, listening to and being able to share the poems that we love, and now being able to work together to create something. It's just so wonderful. Like, I don't know, it's been a long time since I've been able to, join such a creative group of people working together on this. It's lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. It's all Maritza and Alison who put it together. So this is now the third section. So you've experienced, the reading of poetry and collaborative poetry. Now we're going to have a discussion on our experience, and let's see where the discussion goes. And typically the third section is also as fascinating as the first two. So hold on to your hats. Anybody else wants to share what the experience was like? And Anton.
Yeah, this is possibly my favorite experience I've had with the collaborative poem. It's great how organic it flowed together. I've had this experience before too, it organically coming together, but and also I love the intangible. So this is very intangible. So I love this. That's what I have to say. Yep.
Well, thank you, Anton. Jung is very powerful, and this idea of self, it's really, really the art at its best is trying to get at that. Artists at their best show us who we are, especially when we have forgotten, we have kind of identified ourselves with whatever is around us. They show us possibilities which are real, but only by their visioning, their intuition, and then they make it real in a concrete form that you can actually experience that. So thank you. Next up is Alison.
So I really don't know very much about Jung at all. And Cecilia did a great job of really explaining a lot about this. So then, and Glenn also, they were talking about it, then I was trying to think about how to write those in a more poetic way. Also, what I think what worked really well was, about 5 minutes before we did this, where we just stopped and then we edited and we, created stanzas. We moved some lines around, things that went better and could kind of play with the language. It was nice to have that time to try to figure that out and make it just flow more as a more unified sort of thing. I actually am going to have to leave now. I am catching a plane very early in the morning, and I have an Uber coming at 5:30. So I am going to say goodbye. I will see you all in when I return.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Have a bon voyage.
All right.
Wonderful to have you here, and we look forward to your return.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
Maritza, what was it like?
It was fascinating. I get such pleasure out of these. It really is like fast becoming the highlight of my week, certainly the highlight of my Mondays. I really like the idea of it. It almost seems like the concept of the self, as Jung describes it, it almost produces a tremble within all of us. And I feel like listening to both of the poems read here when we came back together, that's what comes through. We all get a little bit more hushed within as we're contemplating this concept, because it is kind of a really vast thing to think about. He's like the totality of being. And so it's quite lovely to be able to kind of tease it out in smaller pieces through poetry. I thought that was quite enjoyable. And it was just nice seeing it resonate with different members of the group. It was lovely.
Wonderful. If we have time, I would like to tease it out in prose, this concept of self, because it's a very powerful concept. And it's, let's see how it goes. Suki.
Yeah, this is my first time to do the collective poetry, and that's much fun, much easier. Like we were in the flow state in that 25 minutes, and it's so natural. And I was not afraid because English is my second language. But during that section, I'm not afraid of making mistake. Maybe poetry had given me more freedom to express myself, and all the inspirations I gather from other people's like collective unconsciousness, like in this wonderful space. Yeah, thank you for providing this platform, and it's definitely my like one of my first experiences. Right now I'm in Minnesota. And it's 100. What's the temperature?
98.
It's 98.
It's usually minus that in winter in Minnesota.
Crazy. Yeah. So I think it's for summer night. If you cannot go outside, make poem with like my people. So I'm very blessed here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Suki. Next
She
up,
can't.
yes.
I vote that be our new slogan. Stay inside, write poetry instead.
Wonderful. Next up is going to be Brian, followed by Cecilia. Brian.
Okay, I've attended several of these meetups and enjoyed them mostly. But what came out tonight, particularly in the breakout rooms, what I'm talking about, is we're a small group. There were only 4 of us, and it really flowed very well. Sometimes there've been up to 7, 8, maybe 9 in the group, and it gets stuck. It's difficult. But with just 4, the smaller group, it flows so much better. And I think it went very, very well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian. Next up is Cecilia.
I have spoken, but I wanted to ask you, because obviously you seem to understand Jung better than probably all of us, although I do have studies in philosophy, but because I'm used to Jung's collective unconscious, and I'm used to his ideas of synchronicity more than self versus ego. But I wanted to ask you, was Jung influenced or heavily influenced by the Advaitists, the concept of non-duality and the understanding that there is the false self, the conceptualized self of the psychological mind, and the real self, the awareness that is beyond, like the witness, so to speak, but beyond the witness? Was Jung influenced by these ideas? Because this is what in his talk about, self with a capital S versus ego being the the small self, that the conceptualized, the psychological mind, as opposed to the functional mind. Am I correct in understanding it like this?
Great question. My understanding of Jung is not very good, but I'm going to try to answer this question. But let's do one thing. Let's have Marco talk about his impressions, and then we will open up the topic of self. And let's talk about this. It's a great question. Marco, go ahead.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking of like a line to say before like going in, but then the poem sort of took a sort of a direction, and were sort of far from what I was thinking, but I sort of learned like a whole something new, brand new. So it was really good, really great.
Wonderful. So Maritza, what I'm proposing is that we should talk about Jung's concept of self and ego a little bit. Is that all right with you? Okay.
Absolutely.
Very good. So who here is familiar with Jung a little bit? No? Okay. All right. Okay.
They're all waving their hands in the gallery, Shrikant.
Okay. Yes, I saw. So, like my understanding of Jung is not very good. Jung is a very deep thinker. I've spent a lot of time looking at his work. And, it's very difficult to grasp. So what I'm going to talk about is my understanding of things. So don't hold it, as Jung's understanding of it. And the way my mind works is that I combine it with whatever ideas that I understand. So this is kind of half Bhagavad Gita, half this, half transcendentalist, half, just lot of things brought together. Okay, so let's keep Jung aside, because I don't feel comfortable saying that this is what Jung thinks. Okay, but let's look at the concept of self that he's trying to get at. Okay, it's his most, as best as I understand it, it's his most profound concept. What he's trying to point to is that we are these magnificent beings, and there is a wholeness to us. There are parts of us that we are not aware of, large parts of us that we are not aware of, and we are aware of some things. And we have a tendency of privileging only the parts that we understand and lock in on that. Just like habits, for example, you can look at it from the perspective of habits. You know, our capacity for action is very large, but we are creatures of habit. We choose certain habits and we keep doing that. No, and in the process, by being attached to those habits, we are not cognizant of everything that we could do. And that is far more so when it comes to consciousness. And that is the distinction that he's trying to make. What happens is that I will now talk from the perspective of Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, which we are studying, and Cecilia, if you could join the 52 Living Ideas meetup, that's where all our meetups are. Toronto Philosophy carries few of them, some of them, but all our meetups are on 52 Living Ideas. We do meetups every day. And the way in which Gita looks at the self is that it holds that there is a core of our beings. You know, we call it, in our group, we call it the center, you know, the center of your being, the deepest part of you. And when you are acting from that, it's not just a static center, it's basically place from which you act and place to which everything returns. So it's a conversation. It's the universal principle that is running through you. So it is the way in which Bhagavad Gita looks at it, is that it says, Tad Tvam Asi, you are that. So it holds that God is in us, each of us, at the core of our being. And, or if you want to put it in secular way, the universal principle is operating within us, just as it is operating in nature. And if you focus on that universal principle and act from it, then the whole of life is consistent with that. So that whole is a very large whole. Now, what ends up happening, again, this is Bhagavad Gita, is that we get attached to the periphery. We get attached to our products. We get attached and get very proud of whatever we have achieved, our social status, our wealth, our looks, many things, our thoughts, our feelings. And when you get attached to those things, you are operating in the periphery and you forget about the center and forget about all the potentialities of the center shaping everything. So you are giving up the whole, which is moving from the center to everything and being attached to this limited things, which Bhagavad Gita would call ego. And it would say the essential problem is that of attachment. And Jung is profoundly influenced by Indian way of thinking. If you want to read this, the best place to read it is in my favorite work of Jung, which is his shortest work and easiest to understand. And that is called 7 Sermons to the Dead. It's fiction, it is literature. You can listen to the whole thing in 45 minutes on YouTube. And it is profound. It is profound. It basically makes this point of this center and the periphery. So self is all about accepting the whole of you, respecting the center of you, and always keeping your eye, going back to the center and acting from it. And so that's my take on this one. So feel free to ask any questions, any comments. Go ahead. We'll start with Cecilia.
Well, my understanding of the Bhagavad Gita is really along the lines of the non-duality of Advaita Vedanta, which is that we have the misconception, and this is where the attachment comes from, we have the misconception of identifying with something that is false, which is this biological construct that is made up of genetics and up-to-date conditioning. But the whole journey before integration is to precisely become aware that we are not this. We are, and this is how I understand the Bhagavad Gita when when Krishna Vishnu presents himself and shows everything. It's that it's not just the attachment, but it is the self-identification. That's an error. And it's very difficult for us to understand this, especially if it comes from the sort of top-down teachings of people like Nisargadatta and Ramana Maharshi. So if we look at the works of Balthazar, for example, he does it from the bottom up, which makes it sort of more understandable to us. So I understand about the center and the periphery, but I think that the whole concept or the whole idea is to even move beyond that, somehow to be able to move beyond that, but still being able to integrate afterwards with the fact that we are this biological entity as well. It has to go through life and has to, but I see it not so much as it being in us, but us being in it, this awareness that we are in it. In fact, I don't see us living life, but life being lived through us. And so I think that the whole message of the Bhagavad Gita is to just surrender that false self, that identification with the mind, our thinking, which is ephemeral, and that the concept that we have of ourselves, to be able to surrender that and just live in the present, absolute present moment, going with the flow, no past, no present, just dealing with the absolute now and remaining there, which is extremely, extremely difficult, right? As long as we identify with our minds and we identify with, I guess, probably then in this case, what Jung could call the ego. I mean, this is just like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but this is my understanding of my reading of this.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Cecilia. So this is enormously difficult topic to talk about because this is actually very different from the Western tradition. There are parts of Western tradition, older traditions, which are consistent with this, but most of the modern Western thought is analytical. It is focused on periphery, and it hopes to get to the center by doing, putting together parts of the periphery to see what the center may be. This has not always been true. Some of the mythology, some of the, like even like Gospel of John that we are studying has elements of this kind of oneness. The most accessible people that I've found are transcendentalists who took Indian ideas and expressed them in their own ways. My favorite amongst them is Louis Sullivan, and he looks at it in terms of form and function. So the function is the center driving the forms. Forms are in the periphery, and the forms are there in order to support the function. So it's not form versus function. It's not center versus periphery. It is that the periphery is being driven from the center and it falls back into the center. So it is one thing. It's the Tao. Another way of looking at it is the Tao. And you have the Tao and you have 10,000 things. The 10,000 things are shaped by the Tao. The Tao remains, Tao is everywhere. So there is oneness. At the same time, in order to deal with things, you use names. You distinguish them. In order to put this computer on the table, I distinguish the table. And that is essential part of living. But it doesn't change the fact that there are universal laws shaping both the computer and the table and me. So there is oneness to things and there is separateness, and all of it, both of them are operating together. And so it's that one. Let's go to Maritza. Maritza.
So I will also not claim to be an expert in any of the topics that are being presented here today. But I've walked along here for the last few years with Shrikant and several others. So I've been, kind of growing a little bit in some of these topics and, studying on my own, even though I have no background in studied philosophy. But, a thinking here is this idea of, Cecilia was talking about duality, and we speak often here of iteration, and that's what comes to mind to me when I think, like, if we're thinking duality, I'm thinking more what we're saying is, iteration, and it's, even Jung speaks of this spiral, this circular motion, and we use centripetal in our breakout session, our group, and we pause for a minute to be like, wait a minute, do we know what this actually means? How do we define this word? We're like, is it a big word? And so we spoke for a minute about the idea that it's a force that's acting on the body and it's moving in a circular path, but it's all directed towards the center. And I find that to be a brilliant manner of describing so many of the topics here. And also, I think it's helpful, at least for me, to envision many of these topics along that the spiraling path, as it were. So if we're talking, this, what is this concept of self? There's I am not super well knowledge, but I have a good memory for remembering quotes. And Jung calls the self, he says it is a, he says it's both a guide and the goal of individuation, which I think is just brilliant. The just the idea that the totality of our being is going to be our guide, but it's also our goal. I think that's duality right there. I mean, you can't get much more dual minded than the concept that the thing to which one is striving is the thing that is walking beside you as you strive. I think that's just brilliant. And it does align with many of the concepts, when you think of Shrikant has a good friend, colleague who's been helping us with some concepts. There, some of his own concepts, and he did a meet. I just got to listen to it, Being and Becoming. They were talking about it, and there's just the it's fascinating to look at how so many pieces can be pulled in together. And what I see here, if we're looking at, both a guide and the goal, tells us that we don't have to choose one. We are free to choose several. And I think that ultimately the experience is that we not blindly just look in front, because if this totality of being is supposed to both be the guide and the goal, then sometimes you have to look to the left or the right, because sometimes it's walking beside you, sometimes it's in front of you. So I don't know if that makes any sense, or if it's helpful or just more confusing. Those are my 2 cents for today.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Maritza. So one thing I would say is that I think of it as conversation, like you're having conversation with the center. So, and it's a two-way thing. Like when I did my my impressionist summary of Bhagavad Gita, I called it singing with God. So you're actually singing. When you're saying Om, you're speaking to God. And the important part of it is that you say Om. Om also has a cycle in it. So it is O, Om, M. O is creation, U is sustenance, and M is destruction or transformation to the next level. And then the most important part is when you're breathing in, you say Om. Then when you're breathing in, you're actually listening for the Om. So you're listening to the center. So you're speaking to the center and you're listening to the center. And it is through that conversation, going back and forth, that you come closer. I mean, even Bhagavad Gita itself is a dialogue. It is not something to be blindly followed. It's not a prescription. It is a dialogue. The other core part of Bhagavad Gita, and Jung as well, is the multiple paths. That, there is Bhakti Yoga, there is Jnana Yoga. So you can use your emotions, you can use your intuition, you can use your power of concentration, you can use your power of working. And all of them basically lead you to the same thing. So it's a very, very deep idea. And all of these ideas that we're studying, thanks to, we're, Cecilia, you may not know this, but in 52 Living Ideas, we are basically studying 3 things in parallel. We're studying Bhagavad Gita that we do on Thursday and Friday. We just finished studying Tao Te Ching, and we are studying Gospel of John. And we are looking at kind of commonalities between, we are studying them first on their own terms, and then slowly patterns are emerging from that. So all of that is really not part of the modern parlance. Most modern Indians really do not know Bhagavad Gita. Most people here in the US do not really understand the Bible at its deepest level. They have, they have rituals, okay? They claim to be devout. They do all kinds of rituals, but the meaning of it is lost. And just going and connecting to that. And that's what Jung did. His power, his insights come from connecting with multiple cultures, mythologies of various cultures, and trying to see patterns and abstracting patterns from that. Go ahead, Cecilia.
Yes, I'm always, having studied Buddhism for 35 years and the concept of anatta and looking at Advaita and everything, and even having read the Bible because I have a degree in comparative religions and everything. And so it was very interesting for me. There's a thing that appears in the New Testament even. It's not the Gospel, well, the Gospel of John is part of the New Testament, but Christ, or this being, whoever Christ was, if he was a historical figure, purported to have said, I am in the world, but not of the world. And so to me, this is precisely what I hear the Advaitas saying, what I hear the Buddhist concept of anatta saying, the no self. Say, I am in the world, but I am not of the world. And so I really do understand. It's very interesting, and I'd like to, if I can, join your discussions. And
Oh yes, you're welcome to just,
look at that.
52 living ideas. We do this every day.
Oh,
Actually,
lovely.
we've got a remarkable person, Yogeshwar, who's been studying Bhagavad Gita for the past 4 years. He reads it in Sanskrit. He has read every major commentary in Sanskrit. He does that 24/7 for the past 4 years, and he's a very deep thinker. So you will definitely enjoy it. Anton.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking of how to phrase this question, that like so like our attachment to self, which it definitely like makes sense to me, is what keeps us either blinded from or distracted from the center or the one. But does that also include like because the word pride and the way I was first familiar with it was as arrogance, and that might be how most people know, but I think pride could also mean proud, which has a more positive association. But is that still Sri Kant or Cecilia attachment to self? Or I guess I mean anyone, I guess, but Sri Kant and Cecilia sound like they've definitely thought about this and read about this,
Sure. Cecilia, would you like to talk about pride?
Yes. Okay. Well, to me, it's still part of the identification with the false self, identification with mind and body, and so it's just it's a feeling, and feelings are part of this biological machine that we are, and so it's still a concept. And I think what's important that the center is precisely moving beyond the concepts, so that there are no more concepts. So you talk about, even if it's a positive, if it appears to be a positive thing, it's still a concept, and all concepts endlessly bring, ultimately will bring suffering of some kind, because the dichotomy is always, we seek pleasure to avoid pain. But in life, that's not possible. There is pleasure and there's pain. But if one is able to move beyond or understand the concepts for what they are, then when one achieves a certain amount of freedom, which is equivalent to peace of mind, which I believe, for myself at least, is the ultimate goal of life, is to be able to live this life with peace of mind. So I think that's what living in the center means. So when you talk about pride, I think it's still like things to do with the periphery. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but like I said, that's my...
Let me try to answer it as well. The simplest way I understand this is the distinction between virtue and value. What you're really focused on is to do the right thing, to be present. And that is really the heart of what you can do, which is good. Now, in the process of doing that, kind of this relentless pursuit of the center, of doing things which are right, which are true, which are good, which are beautiful, this relentless pursuit is going to produce products. And those are going to be very impressive products, by the way. But if you get attached to that, then your progress towards the center stops. What really counts is that progress towards the center. So Jnaneshwar, whose commentary we read for Bhagavad Gita, puts it very beautifully. It's a question of, it's that he's so much in love with the center that he doesn't notice what he has become. He's just aware of the distance from the center. and wanting to go there. And it's like an infinite distance because it is like everything there. And so it's like, look at it in terms of orientation, right? You are pointed towards the center. You're pointed towards the light. Moment you get attached to something that you have achieved, you're looking back, and you're in the process, you're looking away from the center. And you have stopped moving. And it's the movement, this relentless movement in the present towards the center, which is good. I don't know if that answers. What do you think, Anton?
Yeah, it partly reminds me, I'm a big influence of mine is, even though I haven't like read him in a while or listened to what he said in a while, is Eckhart Tolle. And somebody was mentioning, talking about being in the present. It doesn't get as abstract as like what we're talking about now, but it still is about being here in the moment rather than focused on a lot of what might be called the periphery. You're talking about Shrikant, and he talks about the problem with the ego, which is a different definition of ego than Carl Jung. But it does sound, somebody said to me, is like, doesn't it sound like he is influenced by Eastern ideas? And I said, yeah, probably.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. But, you know, these, I mean, it's so wonderful to be able to talk about this. So let's see how we're doing on time. Maritza, do you have any comments?
Well, I'm digesting this last bit, honestly.
Yeah, no, it's all, you know, the Gita meetups have been transformative for me. More than that, there is this guy called Jnaneshwar who wrote in Marathi, who's basically the creator of the Marathi language. He was the first one to write. This is like a 13th century. He's a contemporary of Aquinas. And he has this commentary on Gita, which is about 30 times as long as Gita. And his mission is to make Gita accessible to anybody. Because before that, Gita was supposed to be only for Brahmins, only you had to know Sanskrit. So he's the one, he's like a combination of Aristotle as a philosopher, Martin Luther as a reformer, and Shakespeare as a inventor of a language, all rolled into one. So pretty incredible. And luckily I can read Marathi, so I'm able to read. I don't read 13th century Marathi, but I come pretty close to it. So it's been amazing. Because what has happened, I think, is that the West has become less spiritual. You know, we've forgotten the spirit. We have been busy with other things, you know, doing, and what we have achieved is spectacular. But there is, many people feel kind of emptiness. Mm-hmm. And that's what, you know, kind of bringing that in. And I like my friend Yasuhiko, who talks about new spirituality for the future, because it's not enough to, firstly, you have to do it in 2 steps, because firstly, the distance is so large between the modern way of thinking and the way of these, that you kind of have to immerse yourself first into this in order to get a sense of what it is, because it is so different. Mm-hmm. That perspective, that sensibility is very different. And then secondly, but that's not enough. You need to bring all of the modern things in. Mm-hmm. You have to integrate that. You have to say, okay, how do you live with that in the modern world? How do you have the peace of mind and effectiveness at the same time? So like on effectiveness, you know, again, I'm a big fan of the West. You know, what we've done in transforming the world is pretty incredible. The life, you know, the long lifespans we enjoy are, you know, thanks to that. Those are all amazing, amazing things. So we have to integrate those things. And that's what, you know, I don't think, you know, it's such an amazing task, but any progress you make on it gives you dividends as you go along. So, Cecilia.
Um,
And then Marisa, go ahead.
Okay, very quickly. In my search for, like, unfortunately, the people that I've read that talk about, the Advaitists who come from this Hindu tradition, as in all of them have died, except Muji. But every Saturday morning, there's this man by the name of Roger Castillo out of Australia. And he has achieved enlightenment, like true understanding, and he's alive. And he gives satsang, free satsang online, usually for 2 hours. And he talks about the teachings of Ramesh Balsakar, who are in line with that, except that he tried to make it precisely easier for Western people to understand. So the teachings are bottom up as opposed to top down. And this is where he talks about, how to achieve peace of mind. And he's very, very clear, and it's wonderful to listen to him. So I'm not plugging, but he helped me understand what I had read from Nisargadatta, and he really helped me to understand this. And it's great because he will take questions as well. He's a living embodiment of, I don't know.
Wonderful.
I'm a living master, but, and so, it helps, listening to him really, really helps to simplify, what the center is and how to go towards it and how to integrate. His whole thing is the integration, right? So that we can come back and live in the world, but without attachment to suffering, attachment to those things that bring on suffering.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cecilia. The approach that we have taken at 52 Living Ideas is we are kind of going back to the original sources. And we have a number of really, really great people who participate, who study on their own. And I think the conversation is very important, actually hearing each other talk about what their take is. So that's the approach that, we have been using.
That's great.
We've got about 850 videos of these meetups on the YouTube channel that Marisa has posted. We've got about 50 meetups on Bhagavad Gita so far. And we are up to we just finished, we are going to wrap up chapter 14 on this Thursday. So hope you can join. Marisa.
So when I was going to say change a little bit, listening to Cecilia, as is often the case, it makes me think of just it's a matter of, shift in perspectives. The nice thing about listening to someone expressing a topic differently is that you do get a different perspective on it. But Shrikant, when you were just talking a minute ago, what came to mind for me is, Yasuhiko was telling us that, he says the key to an unraveling is to not let the evolutionary force take over. And I think that is so important for many of us, especially here in the Western world. It's like you said, we get, once you fall in love with an idea, like it begins to die. I think this is the same concept. It's this idea of, there's, you have to have, there's like the push and the pull. And if you get stuck on like the down slope or the down spiral, you have to be cognizant of the fact that it's possible for it to take over. And I wonder, and maybe this is tangential, but if I want to tie back to concepts of Jung, I wonder if the ego is the force that will allow us to prevent the devolutionary force from taking over. The reason I ask that is because, you know, the ego is supposed to be, that is our awareness, right? So if there's this like vast amount of unawareness, as it were, would it stand to reason that using intentionality to sharpen one's awareness can provide the impetus needed to pull us out of maybe what would be a downward spiral, or this devolutionary force, which would be, and I know that Yasuhiko said, you know, you can call it evil. I'm not a fan of the word evil. I feel like, you know, it's too negative. It's too much of a turnoff to people. But it's also another way to look at it is like, maybe it's a matter of, say, for example, we are allowing external influences to pull us in a variety of directions. A little bit of that is not so terrible because, you know, we are social creatures. We live in a world where external forces will act upon us. But maybe the check is, you need balance. You have to also ensure that there are internal forces working upon yourself. And maybe we're in danger of allowing a devolutionary force to take over if that balance becomes unbalanced. And, you know, in that example, maybe there are too many external forces. And so the internal forces are smothering and becoming overly dimmed. I would imagine the ego is what will help us, because, you know, if we're going to sharpen our awareness, our center, as it were, the very first thing will happen, you become aware of the imbalance. Because if one is floating, one is unaware, you can't fix anything because you're in that unaware thing. So that makes sense to me, I think. Just the idea, and maybe it's just, maybe I'm trying too hard to merge it all, but to me, I can see how these concepts can all kind of be sewn into something that works for us. I'm hoping this makes sense. Sorry.
So, Marisa, thank you. See, this is an enormously difficult topic to talk about. One of the reasons for it is that each of these terms mean so many different things to so many different thinkers. And if we use terms like, for example, term ego is expressed, like, for example, for Louis Sullivan, ego is the center. For Jung, and for Louis Sullivan, ego is awareness, is being present. For Jung, it is exactly opposite. It is you forgetting to be aware. It is you holding on to things of the past. You being a creature of habit. You being proud of your past, your social status, your wealth, your clothes. That's what it is. So it's exactly, so that's why it is difficult to talk about. So it's much better to kind of, and there is no point in saying, okay, because it's not the words that matter, it's the meaning that matters. I mean, what we're agreed on is that the awareness is crucial. Like, you're being aware, you're being present. This fresh awareness, attention, awakeness, consciousness, power of concentration, all of that is really the driving force. And that allows you to come back to the center. It allows you to distinguish between things in the periphery and things closer to the center. It will tell you which direction. So just leaving aside the terminology, I certainly think that, presence is where, being present, being aware is what you're trying to do. Now, the interesting thing with Jung is that he has tremendous respect for the unconscious and the conscious. So what he's saying is that there is unconscious. There is a lot of things which are unconscious that you're not aware of. That is part of the chaos. That is part of what the world is, part of what you are. Don't forget that. And it shows up at the edge of your consciousness. And be open to that. So at the same time, what you're trying to do is that you're trying to become more aware. You're trying to increase your awareness. Typically what happens is that whenever something foreign in the unconscious begins to impinge on your consciousness at the edge, most people evade it. Most people turn away. What he's saying is that turn towards it. You know, he says, in the filth, it'll be found. So if you see some problem, face it, because you will see, you will discover through that what is true. So he has very deep ideas about all of this. He has many things which Bhagavad Gita doesn't have. He is standing on the shoulders there, and Bhagavad Gita has some things that he doesn't have. So it's not, so there, he's much larger in some ways because he comes much later. At the same time, Bhagavad Gita captures some things far more powerfully and far more simply than him. So so I don't know whether that addresses what you said. All right, so folks, this is so amazing. And Cecilia, I told you the third section is also very interesting, don't you think?
Oh, it's no, I tell you sincerely, like whatever brought me that grace that brought me here to your group, I am so grateful, because since my husband died, I have not had such a wonderful experience and conversation. And like, I just feel like a kinship, to you three. I'm not seeing Brian, I'm not seeing Mark. I wish I could see their faces, but right now I'm feeling like a kinship, as though it's like, we're all of one mind. Like we can talk about things that are really important, or at least for me, what I consider to be really important, and have that real connection. And so like, I am so grateful for tonight, and I'm definitely going to join you as much as I can. I'm still working until the end of the month, but I will join you, and I want to see you all again so much. Like, I really do. It's like, I feel like suddenly I'm finding my tribe again, it's like, so thank you. Thank you very much,
Cecilia. The thing is that that is what this group is about. I mean, all of us feel that, including Brian and Marco, and that's what keeps us coming back. Because what ends up happening is that we are social beings, and the principle namaste, that the God in me greets the God in you,
absolutely,
is a very fundamental principle.
Yeah.
And in modern times, it is very rare.
We're all one,
to find that. So we just do that every day. So welcome anytime you want.
Thank you. I'm really happy. I haven't been this happy in a long time, believe me. Thank you.
I would like to throw out there just very quickly. So Brian and Marco are two of our shyer members, but brilliant to hear them when they do speak. Absolutely. It's fascinating. I will put this to both you, Brian, and you, Marco. I have had the pleasure of, throughout many months, watching them grow and speak out more frequently. And it really is just beautiful. And not just them, we have other members the same, who when they started, they were very hesitant to participate at all. And as the months go by, they participate a little bit more, and it's just so great to get to see what's inside the shell. It's really lovely.
Yeah, and what happens is that each person is, they have their own way of operating. So Marco asks very few questions, but his questions are always amazing questions. He will bring up some point that, that is there on the minds of other people, but they have not put it explicitly. And he's not afraid to say, okay, I don't understand this. What do you think this is? And so that is a huge thing. Brian has a tremendous erudition. He lives with more books than anybody else. And he is able to bring up different parts of it, whatever he chooses, to bear at various times. He's also very careful thinker and very studious person. So he will think a lot before saying things, and then he will say things in a very concise way. So each person has, has their own kind of modus operandi. But that's the beauty of this format, that everybody is welcome to participate as much or as little. They can do any combination. And, people, it's a format where people can speak their mind. Even when there are differences, people feel free to come and speak what they think, and people actually listen to the other people and try to understand them, which is very rare. So it's Cecilia, I feel the same way about the group, and I feel same way every day. So, and we've done about 900 such meetups, and I still feel exactly the same way about the meetups. So, and it's always a pleasure to find someone new who comes in, who feels the kinship, because, we are human beings and we need that. And it is always great to find a new human being, because you bring your own experiences, your own learning, your own sensibility and way of expressing and understanding things to the group. So it's, I'm just grateful that you came. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And Maritza, I appreciate you letting me read those 2 poems, because I think
It was
only one.
quite delightful.
And
Yes.
I loved your group's poem. It was so beautiful. It really was. Thank you.
Yeah, the collaborative poem is my favorite. It's my absolute favorite
lovely.
part. Well,
Lovely.
it depends on what day you catch me or what time. So I lie just a little bit because they're all my favorite. But it's just, I love seeing, and for me, it's not just the collaborative poem, it's seeing the joy other people get. And when we have new people, it's so great. Like Anton, I remember when Anton first joined us, and something interesting and something great about Anton is when he first joined us at 52 Living Ideas, every time he spoke up, he started with an apology. Like, I don't know if I'm okay to speak up. I don't really know. And then I feel like as he grew to learn that this was a group where everything was appreciated, and that, he did have something to provide. It was nice to see him flourish as well. But I remember the look on his face the very first time he did a collaborative poem. It was great.
Well, I was watching him I was reading the poetry, but once in a while I was watching him, and it's like, I know there's a great poet inside this person. I have not done any collaborative poetry, work with him, but I do feel that you're a person who really has that sensitivity to express ideas in a poetic form.
We have been fortunate
yeah,
to have him share some of his personal poetry with us. So, if you feel like checking out the Hyper book, you will see some of them he has allowed us to post. So they are there.
Yeah, okay, definitely.
All right, folks. Thank you. Go ahead, Anton.
Just saying thank you to her, and wow, and yeah. I'll just be silent now. Not a bad thing.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for.
Bye. See you soon.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.